Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. Now, this is probably not a book I would have picked up on my own. However, my writing group started doing a monthly book club, and I wanted to get involved. And the first book that we took a look at happened to be one that my girlfriend already owned, so that made it very easy to get involved. This is one of my, I wouldn't say my first, but one of my first forays into more of that traditional romantasy. Which is obviously a hyper-popular book genre right now. I reviewed Fourth Wing somewhat recently, so I've been a little bit more in this space than I would have at any given previous time in my life. And it's interesting because I came out of this book, honestly, kind of enjoying it. This is sort of my initial thoughts, little spoiler alert, because this will be a full spoiler review. I'm going to talk about the whole thing. It's been out for a while. We're going to talk about it. Yet, in my writing group, there are a lot of folks who are much more familiar and acquainted with Romantasy, and I think I scored it the highest out of any single person who read it. And again, not traditionally the target audience. I just reviewed like a super hard military sci-fi. I've like, you can see Joe Abercrombie on the shelf behind me. I like grimdark fantasy. I like the hard sci-fi. And I actually enjoyed this book. This book was a very easy read. It was one that I had no issues getting into. I really enjoyed the world building. And while it definitely had its flaws, it definitely had its issues, there was enough about this book that kind of kept me smiling, and the cozy vibes sort of throughout I thought were really endearing. So let's talk about it. Let's break into it. Let's start with the plot. Now, The River Enchanted follows a main protagonist. His name is Jack Tamerlane. And he is a bard who grew up on this magical enchanted island of Cadence, but he was a bastard, and as such did not necessarily have the best childhood. His mother was very secretive about who his father was, which meant that there was a layer of mistrust and secrecy that kind of followed him everywhere that he went. And because of this, and because of some shenanigans that he got up to as a child, he was sent away back to the mainland, which to all for all intents and purposes is very mundane in comparison to this magical island. And was sent to a college to become a bard, essentially. Now, the world itself, so around this, I'll take a second, it was kind of all over the place when it came to, like, time. Because, like, going to college on the mainland is like sounds like a very, like, 2024 or even, like, the last 100 years kind of situation. Yet, they fight with magic swords and dirks, and they row on boats. So in that case, it kind of felt like it's still very much medieval-esque, and in that medieval realm, very much Scottish, as this book is heavily Scotland-inspired. Jack goes away as a child. He gets trained up as a bard. 8 years pass, and he gets summoned back to this island from his lord, who has summoned him, said, "Bring your harp and come back." Okay, I'm going to do that. And he, returns to the island, and as he returns by cover of moonlight because of the spirits, things are kind of immediately off. He has to jump from the boat. Things are going, he sees spirits in the water. They're trying to drag him down. He manages to make it to shore, but he comes ashore on the wrong side of the island. Now, this island, I actually think is the strongest character in the whole book. So again, this is a spoiler review, but I'll go through this. I'll do my normal thing where I'm going to give non-spoiler section at the front and spoiler at the end. Now, Jack, he arrives on the wrong side of the island, the side that belongs to the Breckons. Now, there's two sort of clans that exist on this island, the Tamerlanes and the Breckons, or descendants of those clans, and they've been at war for hundreds of years over a slight that occurred with the the lords of these two clans. They were married, and then there was this big falling out that ended in murder. And where at the center of that area, this magical line appeared, and this sort of literal line in the sand. That separated the island, and magic and the nature functions differently on both sides of the island. So he's been called back for a purpose that he soon discovers is that the lasses, or the young girls of the Tamerlane side, go missing. So he arrives on the wrong side. He's got to get back. He gets captured, realizing it's by an old friend, Torin, who's one of the other POV characters in this book. And then he ends up discovering sort of what the mystery is. And the book basically follows him going and uncovering the mystery of why these young girls are going missing. Now, I said he's one of the POV characters, and when it comes to the overall POV, this book was very scatterbrained. Probably as scatterbrained as this review is going to be, because I'm already so far off my notes at this point. it was really all over the place. Like at first you follow Sidra, who is one of the healers there are towns and there's like a city. It's kind of all over the place. It is literally all over the place. The way the geography of this island works, it's constantly shifting. And her and her husband Torin, he's sort of the captain of the guard. You jump in their heads quite a bit. Then you follow Jack and Adara, who's the heiress or lord to be of the Tamerlanes, and you kind of jump around quite a bit between these characters, which honestly made the process of staying in their heads pretty tough. I'm not going to lie. The different characters definitely had different levels of development, and that impacted the plot quite a bit. Now, I think, again, so that's I'll come back to the plot at the end when I get into spoiler territory. Now, the world building, I think, is the strongest element of this book by no small margin. The island of Cadence is super freaking cool. Now, I talked about the spirits earlier, and I do mean the spirits of the water, earth, air, fire, very traditional 4 archetypal system, which ties into how the magic system of this island works. Now, what's interesting about the spirits is they are a very real and constant presence on the island. Like the idea that you need to go indoors and shut the windows because if you speak, the wind spirits will carry your words away and people on the other side of the island will be able to hear hushed and whispered conversations. The idea that at one point, like a character walks at the door and calls for her husband and he literally hears her and comes running from across because the spirits carry her words to him. And when you go off the path, which the paths are these sort of safe zones across their side of the island, the Tamerlan side of the island, the hills literally like come alive, and not with the sound of music necessarily, in the sense that they truly like warp reality. Like what could be 1 kilometer could become 5, or vice versa. Like if they know you're in a hurry and they want to speed you along, they'll literally like condense space and you can like traverse this quicker. And like I said, I think the island was probably one of the strongest characters in the whole thing because it was the thing that felt the most alive, so visceral, the way every single person interacts with it, the way the small plot choices that Ross made, I think were really smart to sort of take advantage or to be, oh crap, we didn't think about that. There was this really pivotal, crazy moment and the window was open and oh my God, everybody heard and now the secret's out. Like moments like that, just really cool. Like it was very clear that she gave a lot of thought towards how the island actually played into the plot itself, which I thought was great. The magic system kind of ties into the same ways. It seems like everybody basically can learn magic if you're from the island, and it kind of manifests in a couple different ways. One of the big ones is these creation of enchanted artifacts or enchanted items. The big one being plaids, the weaving of enchanted plaids, which can be as strong as steel or provide protection or other things like that, or enchanted dirks. Or weapons. The dirk's like a small dagger, commonly used in Scottish lore. And the idea that you can imbue different elements into these things, but they come at a very hefty cost, or at least they do for the Tamerlan clan, this western side of the island, or eastern side of the island. Crap, I should have double checked that before I started this. Before their side, anyway. And it's really interesting how, the idea of everything comes with a cost, and balancing the need and the desire for these enchanted items for the very real impact that they have. And to the fact that Sidra, the healer, is such a key and pivotal character because she's constantly having to make like tonics and salves and bombs to like try and keep everybody going because everybody is constantly sick from trying to use magic. Flip side, of course, being that they live in a very lush and fertile area. And that, of course, is the main sort of backbone of the modern day conflict between the Tamerlans and the Breckons. The fact that on the Brecon side of the island, they can use magic essentially scot-free. They have no real penalties for using it, which means they just have all these enchanted items. They're these really hard warrior culture, but their land is like abused by the spirits or neglected by the spirits. So like they constantly have to raid for food and other items because it just doesn't grow on their side of the island. So that's sort of the crux of the modern day conflict between these two sides. And yeah, the story kind of goes back and forth quite a bit. Again, I'll get into it in a little bit, but just sort of some final overall thoughts here in a spoiler-free setting. If an inanimate object like the island is like your strongest character in your book, you've got a bit of a problem. And I think this is really where this book fell shy. There is a budding love interest between Jack and Adara, and a sort of a romance of convenience, being that he's a bard and she's the lord in waiting. And they are the two flattest characters. Oh my God. It's so sad. that honestly, this leaves really one-dimensional characters that have very fleeting and sometimes contradictory goals. Like they think in their mind one thing, but in their actions say something totally different, and constantly kind of keep track of what they actually think and feel. Especially given the fact that they have a very kind of storied childhood history together that is then like almost entirely forgotten and or almost kind of memed when they're adults. It was just very, very strange. I think Torrin and Sidra, their relationship was way better. Oh my God, coming into an established relationship. They've been married for 5 years. He has a daughter. The mother died in childbirth, and she sort of stepped into this motherly position. And what really started as a marriage of convenience sort of blossoming into that real love and seeing how they deal with, you know, I would say very real issues that couples might face in real life. This idea of him constantly, you know, his devotion to his work and kind of neglect there, and his love for his daughter, and sort of seeing where she fits into all this, and then her, again, passion for her career and for healing, and then sort of how they navigate that, especially when the thing that ties them together, there are issues with that. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I think like the romance felt, again, I'm no expert at romance. I am not the target audience for this book, but man, it was pretty lame. It was pretty lame. Jack and Adara were like just kind of, wow, they were the flattest characters. Oh, my old menace. Every single time I cringed into my core every single time that line was written. It was like scoff in Fourth Wing. I mean, not used as liberally, but geez, almost there. It was bad. And then how they ended up progressing, it wasn't great. Overall, I rated this book, again, higher than basically everybody else in my writing group. I think I gave it like a 3.5. And honestly, yeah, I read it in like 2 days or like 2 evenings. It was a very easy read. The prose was fine. It was completely unremarkable. There were a couple of really nice sentences, but I think an overuse of the act of one of my other members of my writing group actually did a really good. She broke down like step by step a section from the book and really analyzed it deeply. And I had not appreciated it until you really see it broken down, like you're hard analyzing it. The use of passive voice was really separated you from a lot of the characters, and I think actually attributed to why I did for a lot of them. And this real feeling that you just have that real wall, that barrier, that separation. And yeah, it just made it, I don't know, that little bit tougher for me to really connect. So yeah, again, overall, I think I would give it, you know, it was a solid book. Again, for someone who's really not in the target demo, for someone who hasn't read a lot of Romantasy, I think the world building elements, the magic elements, the overall plot was solid. And that was enough to sort of get me through it. It was a light, easy read. Again, a couple of evenings. I'm not sure I'll read the second one. I mean, the first sort of book kind of did wrap itself up pretty nicely, but did open up the potential. Yeah, obviously, it has to have a sequel. I think it's a duology, which we own. So I might. We'll see. Because I do have some more thoughts on this particular book. So if you've read it or have not read it, now's your chance to, if you've not read it rather, now's your chance to step out. If you are curious or would like to read this book at some point, now is absolutely the chance to do so. However, if you have read it, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the heck happened in the back half of this book, because oh boy, marrying each other after knowing each other as adults for like less than a week is silly. Jack's motivation, oh my God, just the silliest thing. This man comes back. He's been away for almost a decade. He's like, yeah, I'm an adult now. I have a whole life on the mainland. Yeah, it's pretty bland. And first it's like, yeah, I'll be here for maybe a couple of days. Oh, I guess I'll be here for the summer. Okay, I'll give you a year. Yeah, no, I have no intentions of going back. Yeah. And we constantly kept hearing about, oh, my life on the mainland. Nothing happened on the island to give him any real, other than I guess knowing that he has a sister. And there's no reason for him to completely 180 his entire stance after a handful of days. It was just bizarre. He was the strangest. He was the main POV. He was the protagonist, and he was the strangest character for me. His motivations were so amorphous. Oh my God, diaphanous even. Oh, this sense that like, oh, I have to do this for the good of the clan. Bro, like a sentence ago, you said you hated the clan. They gave you so much shit when you were a kid. Like I constantly was getting into it with the vendors because they wouldn't sell to me because the wives didn't like their husbands could have cheated on me and because no one knew whose bastard I was, and so I hated everybody, and I was this bratty awful child, and I thought that I got kicked off. I thought that nobody liked me, and yet he comes back and it's like this girl who they literally left on the worst terms, like were happy to see each other go, were happy to never lay eyes on one another again. And he comes back and like, yeah, I guess she all right. I guess she's pretty fine. Like, bruh. And her reaction, I think, was more because she was, yeah, I really was happy to see you leave. Like they calling him, like lovingly calling him my old menace over and over again. Like trying to really weave up or amp up the fact that they truly, like, while they were friends, they were also like, it was a real bullying situation. And, him giving her the ink, the squid ink or whatever, and her shoving the terrible dream needles in his face. Yeah, their romance was such a pale flame in comparison to how much better Torn and Sidris felt. Oh my God. And this idea that her real legitimate concern is the whole thing break and fall apart when our daughter is missing. And if she never comes back, like, is that really the only thing holding this thing together? Which, is a real thing, that when couples lose children, like a child dies in real life, the chance, like the rate of divorce is really high. I don't have the exact stat, but I remember reading something about it. Well, I think it was like an episode of CSI or something. They talked about it. And yeah, I just, really a much more mature and thought out relationship. I mean, I think Ross kind of screwed herself because she gave us a really great example of a romance and it wasn't the main characters. Oh no, what have you done? Like they were so much more fleshed out, and Torrin going through his whole like come to Jesus moment and his like real like, I don't be an abusive, awful person, like actually step up and like actually think about like, the person's feelings and do I really care and what do I need to do to make that happen? And her dealing with her grief and him realizing that he needs to process her dealing with, like, he's processing his grief, she's processing her grief, but the realization that like, if I don't help her with this, like, I'm going to lose her. And the intricacies of his own relationship with his father, who I wish they had explored more, because the idea that he had a glamour on his front, like this guy clearly knows magic as well, and that's like never touched on ever really. I want to know more about the dad, honestly. Like he seemed like a really interesting character that we did not get to see explored nearly enough. And then of course the whole actual dynamic with the Breckons and all of this. The plot past like the first third of the book was just really meh, honestly. Like, okay, we find out it's a man. Okay, then it's obviously got to be a Brecken. Okay, so then how are they getting over? And the back and forth. I think the strongest element of it was you really were never sure at what point it was going to be a betrayal. And I think that's that mystery element was definitely by far the strongest element of the plot in the back end. You're like, okay, is the son going to, is he going to be the one who's actually betraying them, or is he actually a good guy and his parents are trying to hold on to this? I say the Lords of the Breckons. Which one of them is going to betray you? That was really the big thing there. Or obviously, or is it the spirits collaborating with somebody? Like, how does that go? And I did like the idea that there was that very clear progression of like, and we go from sea and then we go to earth and now we got to go to wind. But that takes me to one really rough element of this book is the fact that Jack never makes a mistake. And Adara really never makes a mistake. Like these characters have no real miscommunication, which is fine, but they have no real miscommunications. They don't really make any errors. They leave a window open. They leave a window open. But like all of the conflict is externally imposed on them. There's almost no real valid, viable internal conflict in this, which I feel like is pretty essential to make a decent romance, to have that tension in the relationship. But all the tension is just like subtly veiled lust. And all of the pressure is external in nature. So they band together, which is great. And I think did lend to the very cozy element of this story. But, oh man, it just really, I think, undercut a lot of it. Again, you have the sort of looming threat and who will betray you, and that's good. And it brings you together. But I think there needed to be some dynamic between them as well. There needed to be, fraught within and without. In order to really sort of up the ante on this story. I think someone needed to have messed up somewhere. Someone needed to have let something slip. The wrong person hears something. The city is starting to turn against them. They learn about the trade maybe. Like, there needed to, like, did you do that on purpose? Like, are you trying to undermine me? Like Adara and Jack? Like, I think there needed to be some element of that was a little bit more causing stress, because they were just team save the girls. Let's go. Jack's pretty much perfect. And so is she. And yay, awesome. And I think, again, it just really just did not help to build out their character traits at all, really. And again, yeah, just kind of rough. And then the whole reveal that he's actually half Brecken and she's obviously, full Brecken at the end. I kind of saw that coming a while away, because it's the second it's like, oh, I'm not going to say who the father was. The option is basically that it's a mainlander or that it's a Brecken. I mean, maybe they're setting it up so that it's the Lord or whatever, and that's why he took in Jack, or took him in and gave him the Tamerlane name. But then you realize it was not. It was actually Lorna. It was actually the mother. So that kind of writes that one off. So you kind of immediately know, unless it's like Immaculate Conception with the spirits, which I did consider momentarily, which would have been interesting. He sort of cadence Jesus. I think it was pretty obvious that it was going to be a Brecken. But then him not actually like really meeting his father and having his father have any say in this, and having it all just be told through the lens of Mirren, I thought was silly. I would have loved for Jack to try and make the trek across and maybe try and rescue the girls or something and meet the dad. And maybe the dad was like originally like, I didn't want to be a part of this, or I thought we were rescuing them, or like he's got some misperception here as well. And then there's a real like confrontation between Jack and his father, and you have the realization that he's his father, and he has to deal with that like face to face with the man. I thought that would have been so much cooler, because the titular River Enchanted really only comes into play in like the last like 50 pages or something, or 100 pages, which kind of weak. But yeah, I mean, again, again, the fact that Jack never messed up any of the magic the first time he writes this Ballad to the Wind, this incredible, challenging, horrible thing, he does it the first time, no issue, no problem. I needed him to make mistakes. I think that's really what this came down to. I needed the main characters to make mistakes. Without them doing it, they just felt like shells of characters, images of characters, and not real, fully complex people. Yeah, the tiny mistake of leaving the window open so everyone finds out that she's actually the Brecken heir. That was just Deus Ex Machina. That just happened because the plot needed it to happen. So she needed to step down. Though again, are we really saying, like, every single person we talk to of the main cast is like, yes, I would love to end this 100 years of trauma between our tribes. I would absolutely love that. Yeah, the second they find out, even though she's been raised there her entire life, literally the only thing that makes her Brecken is blood. The second they find that out, they're like, no, kick her out. We don't want her as our lord. Really? Like, are they that prejudiced still? I mean, I guess so, but I don't know. Yeah, again, I give this book a 3.5. Like, I'm really crapping on it a little bit here, but man, this book really could have easily been like for people who are fans of the genre, I think like a 5-star. I really think there's a world where this book could have been like really top shelf. I think some of the Scottish tropes, like, we need our haggis and our tartan and whatever, like maybe a little on the nose. And my ancestry is I'm like second generation Irish. I'm Canadian, so talking about Irish heritage, the memes. So I can't really speak to how well or poorly the Scottish tropes were implemented. It seems like this is something that this author does quite a bit, is relying on sort of those kind of those elements. My hope is that they're well researched. I can't personally say. If you're Scottish and you're watching this video, how did you, and you've read the book, how did she do? Did she do okay? Did you feel insulted? Did you feel like positively seen? I would love to know, because I'm legitimately curious. To me, it just felt like a little bit over the top, but I kind of, you kind of lean into it because it feels, it's cool and fantastical. And I think it made sense for this particular story. But yeah, that's really it. Again, I'm not 100% sure if I'll read the second book. I don't know on the whole if it improves or, how it ended, the whole idea that they've now got to be separated, which really just means the only way they can be together is to fully end the conflict, destroy the clan line, restore the island, which also makes me think that really now it doesn't seem like there's actually like that conflict can be resolved relatively easily, because both sides then kind of want it, which means I think it's going to be the spirits that are maybe part of the impasse here. And we still haven't learned much about the spirits of fire. Again, we know that they used to be the most powerful and then wind took over. So maybe there's got to be a bit of a reshuffling and a rebalance there. That's my thought about where the story is going to go. But yeah, again, the stakes are kind of whatever, because again, the only real like pressing stakes is the fact that Jack and Adair had to be separated. But I didn't really care as much about their romance to begin with. So yeah, I don't know. Again, give me your thoughts in the comments. If you have read this book, should I continue on to the second one? Should I read more books in this vein? I've been reading or have my eye on a couple more cozy fantasy reads of late because have been writing some cozy fantasy and want to read more stuff in the genre as well. So maybe we'll see some of that on the channel at some point. And yeah, if you enjoy this, you want to see more like it, you want to see me more tackle stuff in this genre, you know, more sci-fi and fantasy, more traditional stuff, also let me know there. I'm always curious to see what people want me to talk about, and also what you guys have thoughts on this book as well. So again, yeah, like, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.